Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wolf Pit. In my opinion, prime rib is one of the most luxurious, tender, and flavorful cuts of beef you can eat. But I think there's a lot of people that are intimidated to cook such a big and expensive cut of meat, and they only eat prime rib when someone else cooks it or when they go out to eat, which is fine. In my experience, going out to eat prime rib is like playing the lottery. You do have a chance of hitting the jackpot, but there's a lot more chances you won't hit the jackpot. You could go to a Longhorn Steakhouse and fork out $26.99 for a 16-ounce prime rib and hope that you get a prime rib that at least resembles the picture. And then the poor server, who may not know any better, brings this to the table.
Ah! Boogeyman!
And you kind of want to laugh, cry, and get mad at the same time. But you can't take it out on the server. It's not their fault. I was nice and polite to the server and explained this wasn't what I was expecting for $27, and I said I'd like to change my order. It was very obvious that whoever cut this piece of meat and put it on a plate to serve takes absolutely no pride in their job. Or you could play the prime rib lottery again and go to a small local diner and have their Friday night prime rib special for $24.99, which is also not a winning lottery ticket. If you know what movie that picture of the diner is from, smash that like button and tell me the name of the movie in the comments. So at this point, you're in the hole $52 for the prime rib lottery. And if you're like me, you gotta keep trying until you win. So at this point, the stakes are high, and you go all in and you fork out $40 for an 18-ounce bone-in King's Cut prime rib from Old Town Steak and Seafood in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And as soon as it's brought to your table, you realize you finally hit the prime rib lottery. And they're not a one-hit wonder. We go here often, and their prime rib is consistently perfect. So there's a very well-deserved shout out to a local small business. But with all that said, you don't have to play the prime rib lottery to get a perfect prime rib. The way you can avoid playing the prime rib lottery is by buying a prime rib and cooking it at home. If I can do this, any one of you, the people, can too. There's all different kinds of ways to cook a prime rib, and if you like the way the prime rib turns out the way you cook it, then you did it right. So in other words, there's no right or wrong way to cook a prime rib. So let's get started, and I'll show you one of the ways I like to cook prime rib. The prime rib I'm cooking today is an 8-pound boneless, dry-aged rib roast from Lobel's of New York. So let's get the prime rib unwrapped and seasoned. I don't like to do a whole lot with prime rib. I like to just keep it simple and combine kosher salt with coarse ground black pepper, granulated garlic, and granulated onion. Give it all a good mix until it's well combined. If you want to add more seasonings or an herb butter, etc., go right ahead. Once the salt, pepper, onion, and garlic are combined, it's time to season the prime rib. Now, if you're unfamiliar with buying, preparing, and cooking a prime rib roast, there's several ways you can buy them. You can buy the roast with the bones still attached. You can buy them deboned with the bones cut off and then tied back on. Or you can buy them totally boneless with no bones at all, but the roast is still tied. And I know what some of you are probably thinking. Why are you tying up a roast if you're not tying anything on? By tying up the roast, you're keeping it uniform, therefore it cooks uniform. Because sometimes during the roasting process, the roast can tend to separate, especially where the meat meets the fat. I've bought prime ribs all different ways, prepared them all different ways, and cooked them various ways. For me, there's only two things to remember when cooking a perfect prime rib. With it being such a big, dense roast, you want to season it very, very generously to the point where you have a nice salty seasoned crust on the outside. And the second thing is, don't overcook it. If you stick to those two rules of thumb, you'll cook a perfect prime rib every time. So this is the underneath of our prime rib, and we're going to start off by seasoning it very generously with salt, pepper, garlic, and onion. Some people like to add a light coating of oil, mustard, or Worcestershire sauce to help the seasoning stick to the meat and create a better bark. But like I said, I like to keep everything really simple, and I apply the seasonings directly to the meat, and I haven't had any issues with creating a bark or having the seasoning stick to the meat. So like I said earlier, there is no right or wrong way to season your prime rib. So continue seasoning all sides of the entire roast, especially the very sought after end pieces, which will have the most flavor, but they'll also be the most cooked. Now at this point, you can cook your prime rib right away, but I like to put it into the refrigerator overnight to do a little bit of dry brining, if you will. It's not necessary, but I think it helps a little bit. So it went into the refrigerator uncovered overnight. Now here's an often asked question. Do I need to bring my prime rib up to room temperature, or can I start cooking it cold right out of the fridge? And in my opinion, that all depends on how you're going to cook your prime rib. If you're going to start off cooking your prime rib in a blazing hot oven or grill, you want that prime rib to be as close to room temperature as you can before doing so. And that's because if you put a very cold piece of meat into a very hot oven or grill, it shocks the meat. Shocking the meat will cause some problems with your finished product. For one, it's going to very unevenly cook your prime rib, and you'll have that outer band of well done prime rib with the center of the prime rib being medium rare to medium. Also, when a cold piece of meat is shocked with extreme temperatures, it causes the meat to constrict, therefore squeezing out some juices and tightening up the meat, giving you a less tender and moist finished prime rib. So if you're going to initially cook your prime rib with high heat, make sure it has several hours to sit out at room temperature to significantly cut down on the initial shock. But if you're going to slow cook the prime rib like I'm going to do today, there's not going to be much, if any, initial shock, which means you don't have to bring it up to room temperature at all. If you're going to slow roast it in the oven, take the roast out of the fridge an hour before you put it in the oven. But when I smoke my prime rib, I like to leave it in the refrigerator until just before I'm ready to put it on the smoker. I feel the cold meat allows for a better smoke penetration, and a cold piece of meat obviously takes longer to cook than a piece of meat that's up to room temperature, therefore also increasing the smoky flavor.
And that's what we're doing today. We're smoking our prime rib. So set up your grill or smoker for indirect cooking and bring it up to 250 degrees and add whatever kind of wood flavor you like. Today, I'm using pecan wood. Or is it pecan wood? You say tomato, I say tomato. If you don't have a grill or smoker, or you simply just don't want to smoke your prime rib, put your prime rib in a roasting rack and set it in the center of a preheated 250 degree oven.
Now just simply let the grill come up to temperature. And as usual, Bella the Wonder Dog is in the background supervising. Under Bella's supervision, everything is guaranteed to turn out right. Now once we're up to 250 degrees, add the prime rib. And then insert your meat probe into the thickest part of the meat.
And you want to smoke or cook your prime rib at 250 degrees until the internal temperature reaches 120 degrees.
After smoking at 250 degrees for 2 hours, our prime rib is at 120 degrees. And when I opened up the lid and this is what I saw, I couldn't have been happier. Right now, it looks absolutely perfect. But there's one more thing I needed to do. So remove the prime rib from the grill, loosely tin it with foil,
and then increase the temperature of your grill, smoker, or oven to 450 degrees. The high heat will give it a nice crust. So once your grill, smoker, or oven is up to 450 degrees, add your prime rib back in for 4 to 5 minutes until it has the perfect crispification.
After searing at 450 degrees for 4 minutes, our prime rib is ready. Now remove the prime rib from the grill, loosely tin it with aluminum foil, and let it rest for 20 to 30 minutes before slicing. After resting, the first thing you want to do is remove the butcher's twine. And this is important to begin with, but especially important if you have kids. You don't want anyone choking on the twine. Once all the twine's been removed, the only thing left to do is slice up the prime rib and eat it. Now when it comes to prime rib, you can slice it as thick or as thin as you like. It all depends on how big your prime rib is and how many people you want to feed. And you can see this prime rib is cooked evenly from end to end to the exact same doneness, without having a well done band on the outside with a medium to medium rare in the center. And that's what happens when you don't shock cold meat with extreme heat. And even though I don't think I need to point it out, as you can tell, this prime rib is extremely juicy. That's a flash flood of flavors to your taste buds for a one-way ticket to Flavor Town. And there you have it. That's all there is to cooking the perfect prime rib every single time. It doesn't get any easier or simpler than that. And the reason I know that is because I can do it. And if I can do it, anyone can do it. So of course there's one last thing to do before we end this video, and that is to grab a big old slab of prime rib that even Fred Flintstone would be proud of. Normally, I take a couple bites of the food for you, the people, so you don't have to, but today I'm taking a bite for me, the person. That first bite off the spinalis cut of the muscle is exactly what I want my last meal to taste like. It's melt in your mouth tender, it's salty, it's smoky, peppery and savory, and overall absolutely delicious. The more I ate, the better it seemed to get.
This prime rib was rich and buttery tender.
It's literally the definition of melting your mouth tender. The pecan wood was the perfect choice for this prime rib. It complemented the meat with a very subtle, sweet and smoky flavor. So the next time you get a hankering for some good old prime rib, don't play the prime rib lottery and make one at home yourself. You'll be happy you did.
Thank you all very much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.